best to have a more collaborative approach with patients, educate, and then we can decide together what's going to be best for each individual patient.
To have a solid foundation of pleasant communication makes the harder conversations easier because there's an understanding that this is not coming from a place of deep animosity. We really are still pulling on the same end of the rope. We're trying to accomplish the same goals. You're very sensitive to just a little extra inflection in your spouse's voice when your spouse is your business partner.
We do need to address diet in order to address stress, because if you're eating sugar and drinking caffeine and processed foods and alcohol, you are not going to respond as well to stress.
Hey everyone, welcome to Fearless Family Business. I'm really, really excited to have you here today. I have my good friends Dave and Joya here. I am so excited to have you here. This is, one of those great shows where we can talk to the entrepreneurial members of the family business, the people who are founding the business, who are starting it at the very beginning, working as spouses together. And we've had a couple of episodes where we've interviewed the founding spouses. It's a great opportunity because I think there's a lot of couples out there that are starting businesses together, that are working together. And there's an interesting, there's a lot of dynamics to that, as there are with companies that are many, many, many generations down the line. And so I think that a lot of people can learn from your story, because it's been inspiring to me to learn from you as well. So I want to kind of start maybe from the end and work backwards a little bit. I'd love to hear about what the business is, how you're working together, how are you helping people, and just tell us a bit about the business.
Sure. So I started Nourish House Calls back in 2018, just by myself, kind of as a part-time endeavor. Dave was a full-time and more attorney downtown at the time, and we had a 6-year-old and 4-year-old twins. So, starting that and intending that to be part-time was, how it started out. I have a super passion for functional medicine, understanding people, understanding how their bodies work, and then helping them to feel better. And often that means getting to the root of their problems rather than band-aiding it. And oftentimes patients who come to me have been dissatisfied with traditional medical care and are looking for true care, but also somebody to dig with them and find the root causes and actually make them better instead of, again, medicating for the rest of their life, for example. So that's what I do. I do a lot of hormone management, hormone replacement therapy, peptides, a lot of regenerative medicine. So things like joint injections and IVs of stem cells, Wharton's jelly, that kind of thing. And then a lot of IV nutrition therapy as well. So kind of all things that are aimed towards helping people's bodies work better so that the body can then function at its best and the person can then feel their best. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you nailed it. And then I came on, it's coming up on 3 years ago now as we record in October of 2024. I had not been particularly happy as a big firm litigator for reasons we can get into or not, because we're obviously more focused on the current business. But I wanted to take a break from that, and Joya had this business and another business we had started together that's since been shuttered. And I thought after a conversation with the great Jamie Gruber, if I took a break from the law and spent 6 months really trying to help grow the businesses, where could we go? And we had enough set aside that even if everything went to zero, we could still feed and clothe and have a roof over our children. So we took the chance, which is to say Joya allowed me to take the chance. That 6 month sabbatical is now almost 3 years. So it's been a blessing to work together. And for me personally, it's much more satisfying to work on a business that is affirmatively directly about helping people, as opposed to taking a side of an argument just because I was paid to take that side of the argument.
Right. Yeah, that, and I'd love to get into that story too about how you left the legal world and all that kind of stuff. I want to get into that and for those of you listening, Jamie Gruber, he's kind of like the entrepreneurial whisperer in a way, I think. Maybe not even whisperer because he shouts a lot.
He does shout, yeah.
But we know him through a community that we're part of called Go Abundance. And in fact, that's how Dave, you and I met at an event in Chicago that Jamie was hosting. And that's where I got introduced to Nourish House Calls and learned about what you all were doing. And that's kind of what inspired me about your story. And then I had a chance to sample the product, so to speak, last year in Vermont when we had another thing. So I'd love, Joy, if you could maybe tell us about how the process works, how you do operationally help people in terms of like how they contact you, how they get in touch, and then maybe walk us through that process of how you work with people.
Sure. So probably 95% of my patients are from word of mouth referrals from happy patients, from patients who feel better after working with me. And so typically then they'll go to our website, nourishhousecalls.com, and they can learn about what we do. We've got a pretty comprehensive website, lots of information on there, but also the availability that they can book a discovery call with me. And that is a free 15-minute call where they can basically tell me what's going on with them. I can listen. They can get to know me a little bit. I can get to know them a little bit and kind of get a sense for each other, right? Because this is a cash-based business. I do not charge insurance. I'm out of network. So it's you pay me, I provide the service. That kind of thing. And so really, I feel like it's more fair before I pay somebody, I want to know what I'm getting or what I'm getting into. And so that's part of the reason I offer those discovery calls. I also want to make sure that this person is ready and appropriate and is complaining of something that I can help them with. Usually it is if they found me. And so then we book from there. The conversion rate is something like 95%. People who are on a discovery call will almost always book their initial appointment. I spend between, do you disagree with that number?
I think that might be
lower now. It used to be higher.
That might be optimistic. As we get more people in the top of the funnel, the conversion rates go down a little bit, and that's not a bad thing because the law of large numbers. As we attract more people, sometimes we're going to attract maybe not the right person, or a person who isn't quite ready is usually a better way to think about it. And so we don't always capture the people who have a discovery call and maybe come back or will come back years later. But 95 is probably a little bit high these days.
Okay.
But we're still Joy is still excellent in that conversation. And even with the people who don't end up booking an initial appointment, often she can point them in a helpful direction, which is wonderful too.
That's
overall,
amazing.
I just want people to get help. That's the thing. Whether it's with me or somebody else, there's help out there. So initial appointments are usually 60 to 90 minutes. I really spend time listening, digging in. Often people will comment that this was like half therapy, half medicine, right? Which we have to do both together because it's all a part of the person. And so at the first visit, order testing, talk about what testing might be necessary. And then at that follow-up visit, which is my follow-ups are typically an hour, we go over the labs. And what that means is I explain it. I don't just go, yep, your labs were all normal. See you next year. I want patients to understand those numbers and not only be within the normal range, I want people to be in their optimal range because that's where they're going to feel best. And that's where we're going to prevent disease best. Lots of other things. So lots of good reasons to be in the optimal instead of just the normal range. And then from there, I'll have them kind of determine and help them determine what membership package level is best for them. So we run things on a membership model. And so there's basically two, and then we have kind of an elite anti-aging, like longevity program that's a little bit different. But the two, maintenance and signature, there's a certain number of visits with me in there, or when we have other providers, and then a certain number of visits, certain discounts on additional services if they would need those, including anything regenerative, which
IVs
is awesome. Well. There's IVs, IV, nutritional IVs included in there. And there's always the option to add on whatever the patient needs, but that's kind of the basic structure.
Yeah, that's what I did. I did the IV treatment last year, which was like I felt like Superman afterwards. Just
great?
like go on the mountain skiing around. I'm like, I feel awesome.
Yeah, I wish everybody could experience that at least once. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's incredible. And so when you're so typically if a client's coming to see you, and I know that they see you for a variety of reasons, but like, what are they typically coming in? What are their pain points? What are they experiencing that lead them to want to call you?
Yeah. So not finding help elsewhere is typical, right? And that's kind of general. But specifically, a lot of my patients are women 40 to 60 years old who are changing, they're gaining weight, they're brain foggy, they are like hormones are getting disrupted, right, at that time. So libido's going down, they're gaining weight, they're depressed or anxious, they're not sleeping as well. Oftentimes what I hear is, I just don't feel like myself. And they know something's wrong, but the gynecologist is not really offering any help. If they're even recognizing it, it's, well, this happens to all of us, so you just have to get through these next years and hot flashes and all, right? Or it's, here's the birth control pill, or it's, here's these synthetic hormones that, we don't have a huge discussion about. It's just, it's very paternalistic medicine. It's not so much collaborative. And I much prefer, and I think it's best to have a more collaborative approach with patients, educate, and then we can decide together what's going to be best for each individual patient. Other pain points, I see some kids with autism, ADHD, a lot of GI issues. So I'm constipated, I have diarrhea, I'm bloated, I don't tolerate foods well, that kind of thing. And nobody can really tell me. My colonoscopy is totally normal. And beyond that, the GI doctor kind of just said, well, I guess you could be on Miralax for the rest of your life if. So really digging deeper and getting to the root cause and solving those problems so that people don't need me after a while either. I just had a member cancel because she's like, I'm feeling great and I feel like I'm on a good trajectory. I said, that's great. Tell your friends.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's on the functional medicine side. What about the regenerative side of the practice?
So regenerative, I'm super excited about. Every time I inject a knee or an elbow or hip or a shoulder, or even give an IV of this stuff, I'm surprised, and I shouldn't be surprised that it works so well. 4 weeks ago or so, saw a former pro soccer player who had, as you can imagine, multiple surgeries on his knee, and his knee was kind of a mess. And he wanted to run a half marathon in 4 weeks, I think, from when I had seen him. And I went, "Ooh, okay, we can do this, but listen, you got to take it easy on the training, and you got to." So 3 days later, I always check in on patients. I want to know how they're doing, and because I want to know the successes mostly.
Sure.
30% less pain in 3 days already. And then 4 weeks later, ran the half marathon with no pain.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah. So it's so exciting to be able to help people in such a simple way that's non-invasive, really no risk. I mean, low risk to no risk, right? Anytime you inject something, there's a risk of infection and that. But,
sure.
It's not surgical. It doesn't have downtime. No risk of anesthesia. Nobody's cutting you open, cutting body parts off or out or replacing knees, So it's such a great option. It so well fits with functional medicine because it's restoring the body. It's helping the body heal itself. I love it.
And when you're saying regenerative, is that stem cells or
yeah?
What kind?
So we can't technically call them stem cells, but that's kind of how everybody knows it. What I'm injecting into joints typically is going to be a product with Wharton's jelly, so it has a lot of those healing factors, cytokines, structural components to cushion the joint while it creates the perfect environment for healing and signals the body to bring stem cells. It's kind of like starting a little fire in a garbage pail in a room in your house, and then we know exactly, like the firefighters know exactly where to go to put that fire out and solve that problem.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. That's incredible. And so now kind of extending into like how you got to work together. So Joya, you started this business, before Dave even got involved, 2018. And before that, and even now, certified nurse practitioner, you're working that, Dave, you were an attorney, battling the law or fighting for the law, or one of those two. I don't know how that works.
Fighting within the law for my clients, whether I wanted to or not.
Whether you wanted to or not.
Yeah.
What was the catalyst that brought you together? Was it the desire to work together? Was it just, Dave, you wanted to get out of that? How did that
the catalyst was misery.
It was largely misery. I was pretty unhappy practicing law, largely for the reason I discussed earlier, which was arguing a side of a case whether I thought it was correct or not, and not necessarily morally, just from a legal standpoint. I could look at the law and the facts and my client's position, and sometimes I thought, oh yeah, we've got a slam dunk case, and other times I thought, this is going to be an uphill battle, and I'd rather not go into court and try to argue this with a straight face. And I would still have to, because that was my job. And I recognize that the adversarial system of justice is probably the best system ever devised, and everyone should be entitled to counsel, but not everyone's entitled to counsel by me.
Right.
And that pricked my conscience a great deal. I had looked at maybe becoming a judge and got into politics for a while. That ended up fizzling out, largely because politics is kind of gross. And so I circling back to Jamie Gruber, the entrepreneur shouter, this is late 2021. I had lunch with him after a Michigan football game of all things, because I had gone up with a buddy who's a Michigan fan. And Jamie lived near there at the time. This was before he moved to the Dominican. And he talked me through the whole process of, don't think about it as quitting, think about it as taking a break. What's the worst that could happen? If everything goes to zero, do you have savings? Yes. Could you always go back and get another job? Yes, I could become a lawyer. I could probably go back and get my old job at the law firm if I didn't burn the bridges to, just barely singe them. And that gave me the confidence to come home the next day and say, hey, Joy, I've got this great idea. And pretty much ask permission to at least try this. And Joya, with great grace and no small amount of internal shock, I'm sure, said, why don't you give me until Thanksgiving? Let me just stew on this. And that was completely reasonable. And that was funny. We were talking about your 20th anniversary trip just before we started recording. It was probably the second week of November. We took our 15th anniversary trip to Albuquerque just for a long weekend, and we were sitting at this very nice farm to table restaurant. It was the best meal we had there. And Joya said, I want to let you know I'm on board. Let's go through it. And I started weeping so hard. I was so relieved from the pressure of having to continue to do this thing that was really kind of digging away at my soul.
Yeah. It still gives me I still get teary thinking about that.
So that was a great gift she gave to me, and ultimately it's allowed us to grow the business more quickly than we could have otherwise. So I now function as the chief operating officer by title, but really I'm in charge of all of the non-clinical aspects of the business, so that Joya is free to operate as much as she can in her zone of genius, which is healing the sick. And she does a fair amount of content creation. We collaborate on that. She's the face of the business as well. She should be, because she's the one providing the service. But I'm in the background pulling strings, figuring out what to do next. And we operate on EOS, and so we're meeting every week and figuring out to-dos from that. But it's been a great joy for me to do that. And it's come with no small amount of identity shift for both of us, not just for me going from lawyer to not lawyer, but really me going from main breadwinner to a supportive role, both in the business and at home, because Joy is seeing patients full time. So I'm the guy who's taking a trapper keeper to school this morning when our 13-year-old forgot it, as may or may not have happened. Or,
it absolutely happened.
Right, it absolutely 100%
totally
happened this morning. And I'm driving everyone to all their activities almost all the time, which is great. I love it. I've seen far more of my children in the last 2 3/4 years than I did in the decade that I practiced law. So there are no complaints, but it's a very, very different kind of life. And for Joya, and she's her own person, she can speak for herself, but I'll speak for her first. It was a shift kind of the opposite direction from this business is part-time and can make whatever money it makes, and that's fine because the law firm gives us a nice, healthy automatic deposit twice a month to no, this is how we're feeding our family now. We have a few other streams of income, but this was really the core business. And so got to be full-time, a little more pressure to make the money. And I think that shift was maybe a little more difficult for both of us than maybe we anticipated. So do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, I think for me, the shift in how I had grown up was male-female roles, traditional male-female roles. I still think that there is huge value to traditional male-female roles. And I think those are there for good reason. And me being kind of the one out there earning the money in a concrete way, I suppose, feels more masculine to me than I would prefer to feel. And then we need to make sure our marriage dynamic stays him masculine, me feminine, and we often have to catch ourselves going, are we business partners or are we married? And can we have that? Can we do that shift, or is there a mix of it? Or so it's been a more intentional. We've had to be more intentional, certainly, about our relationship and roles. Yeah.
And can you expand on that? Because that's really interesting how you're putting that there. I mean, as far as the dynamics, because it leads into the next question I wanted to ask, which was how does that overlap or balance with regard to business and now your marriage? How does that dynamic work for you, and how do you manage it? It sounds like there's certainly that gender role kind of, or masculine, feminine kind of quality there that you have to be intentional about. What does that look like, and is there anything that you're doing in particular that's helping you to manage that effectively?
Well, one thing is, when we're good about it, we schedule dates every 2 weeks, and I think that definitely helps. We still have to be intentional about not discussing business and kids primarily on these dates.
Yes.
We're both people who like to be productive and like to check things off a checklist, right? And so to be productive sometimes feels really good. But what we don't want, I'll speak for me, what I don't want is for when the kids leave the house for us to go, oh, cool, we're business partners, but like, who are you again?
Right.
Like, I love you and I want to continue to love you and be excited to be with you and spend time with you and do interesting and exciting things. So I realize we can't not do that now and then expect that to be back, when the kids leave the house, or if we sell the business at some point, or whatever. So I guess that's maybe a less concrete explanation. Maybe you can do a better job.
I just want to say, for those of you who are experiencing this audio only, the "I love you, I want to be with you" is directed to me and not to Adam. We do love Adam, but in a very different way. Just
on behalf of my wife, who probably listens and doesn't watch.
Once again, I'm speaking for this grown woman who is also my wife and my boss.
We're all on the up and up.
Yes, so we're just to, again, clarifying roles.
Sure.
I think everything Joya said is spot on. The other thing I'd add is really being intentional about how we speak to each other professionally and personally, and making sure that we have love behind everything we say to each other. And there are hard conversations in business, and there are hard conversations in marriage. Before we ever started working together, sometimes we would call a particular discussion a performance review, because there are some times when, hey, Dave, take out the garbage. Notice when things need to be done. And Joy's never had to have any of that sort of feedback. It's all flowed one way. Never. She's operated perfectly for these 18 years. But to have a solid foundation of pleasant communication makes the harder conversations easier, because there's an understanding that this is not coming from a place of deep animosity. We really are still pulling on the same end of the rope. We're trying to accomplish the same goals. So that's important. And I think drawing some more boundaries, even within the course of the day, of here's when work time is over. Now we're parents, now we're spouses, now we're friends, now we're lovers. It doesn't mean we can never talk about the business, but that isn't the focus at 9:15 after the kids are finally down and we're on the couch. Let's talk to each other about each other, or sometimes more often than we probably should, let's put on the latest Netflix garbage show and just turn off our brains. But at least we're not trying to solve business problems. And I think that fosters a better connection maritally over time. And I hope it makes us more effective in the business, because we're not burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah. And that resonates a lot. as you're talking about that, being intentional about the conversations you have at the specific times, it reminds me, I do something, my wife and I do something similar as far as being really intentional about setting those conversations. You mentioned around like most of those conversations when you have kids, especially young kids, even teenagers and getting older, it tends to revolve around, well, what are they doing this week? How are the things? What are we coordinating? It does become a transactional business relationship, and the level of our marriage has just gone up so much when we just started being intentional about talking about other things, what we dream about, what we love about each other, what we appreciate, what we want to do together. And I mean, those things, it's meaningful. So it's nice to hear that kind of reflected on what you're doing as well to kind of keep that intention.
Absolutely. And the logistical conversations are incredibly important too. Mm-hmm. We have a son who's a pretty high level athlete, for as much as you can say that about an 11-year-old. And so he's going hither and yon for different sports at different times. And he and his twin sister go to the same school, but then their older sister goes to a different one. And so we've got those things and other activities, and the girls are musicians and I do ice skating. And so there's a lot of, all right, who's driving where? When are we going to be home? Who's making dinner and what are we having? Why is it protein shakes again? That sort of thing. And so those conversations have to happen.
Yeah.
And that makes it all the more important, like you were saying, to carve out space for the more important but less urgent conversations.
Sure. And naturally, with kids and running a family business where you are, you're working together, I would imagine that those conversations about business overflow into your kids. They're probably hearing what you're talking about. They're even involved. To what degree are you involving your kids on those discussions? Are you talking to them? Are you trying to integrate it, keep it separate? How does that work?
I think integrating to a point, and insofar as it teaches them about what it's like to run a business and the things that we think about and the reasons why we choose to spend our money the way we choose to spend our money. That's a big conversation because, of course, they want to do and have all the things, and we do not spend all the money on all the things and all the activities that they want to do.
Right.
So for them to understand, okay, well, how much money do we charge for a visit, and how much money does your baseball cost? Oh,
yeah.
So we do have those conversations with them. Sophie's starting to do maybe some of the social media or thinking about how to kind of organize that a little better. She's a 13-year-old, so anything social media excites her at this point. But yeah, the twins are 11, she's 13. So they're youngish, but not too young to start to have these conversations. So we don't hide it from them, certainly.
Yeah.
Right. And so we'll have conversations sometimes around them. And Sophie especially will affirmatively ask, how's the business doing? She's looking for connection. She's on the autism spectrum. And so the connection is something she craves, but is not always, it's not a great skill for her. So when she can find a question that will engage someone, she'll ask it more frequently. And that's probably a skill for all of us to adopt. And so with some frequency, she'll ask how the business is going. And I like to give her a window into that for all the reasons Joya said, but also it's an area where I can connect with this particular child. And certainly I would do the same for the others as they get curious.
Yeah. Then, as far as you'd mentioned, Joya, that your 13-year-old, she is already kind of involved in the social media aspect. Is there any desire to get them into the business, or do they have any desire to work for the business at some point?
I think it's probably too early to tell.
Yeah.
With them, with Sophie on the autism spectrum, I'm not sure that like a career in like a healthcare, like a maybe healthcare, but not healthcare in such a personal way where you really have to pay attention to nonverbal cues and you really have to consider how somebody else is feeling or might feel if you would say something. I'm not sure that is where she is gifted. The other two, Emily is very interested in the body and medicine and that kind of thing. So that's a possibility. She hasn't necessarily expressed interest in that, but we also don't want to push them and make them feel in any way obligated. I would rather have them follow their passion, follow their gifts, follow where God is leading them, rather than have them feel a pressure to to stay on with us.
Yeah, and that's not to say that no one on the autism spectrum could be a successful licensed practitioner of functional medicine.
Her particular brand of autism,
Sure.
I don't think would cater itself well to what I do.
I think that would not be an ideal fit. And I've heard you talk to other family business owners about this, and ours is a little bit different because it is a licensed profession, and so if someone wants to come and be in the big chair, they have to be a licensed healthcare professional, whether that's an MD or a DO or a nurse practitioner.
Right.
And probably one of our 3 kids has expressed any sort of interest in that, and the other 2 less so, and it probably doesn't align with their gifts anyway. So Joya said it well. We're certainly not trying to funnel them in that direction. I think our vision for the business is probably not quite so multi-generational legacy. It's let's help all the people we can. Let's scale up and have impact on employees as they come through. And then when we're ready to retire, let's sell it and go sit on a beach somewhere.
Yeah, I love that you point that out, because there's a stigma in family business in particular that, like, hey, families that work together, we gotta make it multi-generational. We gotta pass on this legacy, and that we have to imprint the legacy of the business of the business of the business. But I think it's important to hear stories like yours where it's like, well, we don't have that long generational outlook, and our plan is to sell it. And there's millions of different ways you can skin that cat, which I still don't know why that is a phrase. But yeah, but I think I think you're just demonstrating one option out of many successful ways that you can do it. And selling a business, even if it's a business in the 1st generation or the 5th generation, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're intentional and you're building that for it. I'd love is there anything beyond the business itself, as far as the legacy is concerned, that you think about, like what you want to pass on to the kids, what you're more concerned about?
Yeah, I mean, so certainly how we care for and treat our bodies, right? Mm-hmm. And I talk a lot with patients about what we eat and how we sleep and how we move our bodies and stress and how we respond to that and handle that. What we put in our bodies and what we choose not to put in our bodies, both in terms of food or medications or various injections. Mm-hmm. I have discussions about that with them definitely more often than I would imagine other parents do, because that is what I do. That's what I'm passionate about. Mm-hmm. I know that it makes a huge difference in health. Not only physical health, but mental health for sure as well. And if I can instill that they have control over their health for the most part, right? Of course, God is ultimately in control, is what we believe and what we teach our kids. Mm-hmm. But you have personal control. If you want to sleep well, you shouldn't be having gummy bears before bed. If you want to keep all your toes, as I often say, you shouldn't be having that box of Swedish fish that church Sunday school gave you. So yeah, that is definitely a point of legacy. That's where I see it, and giving them the information that they can use to make good choices.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest, hopefully multi-generational legacy that comes from the business we operate. More foundationally than that, and Joya kind of hinted at it, we are disciples of Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. And if our children have a disordered relationship with food, if they are unhealthy people, but they are saved by the grace of God, then I will feel like that's all the legacy they need. And if they can pass that on to, God willing, our grandchildren and our great grandchildren, so much the better. That's the legacy I care about.
Yeah, that's. I'm so glad you say that, because a lot of times in the rooms of many family business meetings and things like that, the primary conversation is legacy around wealth, around our assets, and those are important, but they're just one element of a greater thing. And so the fact that you bring up first, faith and health are big deals for the idea of legacy, because those two things in particular, I believe, and it sounds like you share this belief, that those things drive the rest of what we do, whether it be the wealth or whatever. I mean, it's more about it's less about how we transfer our wealth in legacy and more about how we prepare them to prepare our kids or prepare the next generations to be self-sustainable through their faith, through their health, through their own creation of value and wealth in the world. So well said.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry to go on that rant, but I'm so glad to hear that from somebody else on that front. It's so important. So yeah, I think we've talked about legacy. We've talked about kind of how your business is going, and you mentioned, you briefly mentioned EOS, Dave, about that you implement EOS in here. And I'm a big EOS fan. I read Gino Wickman's book, Traction, many years ago and drank the orange Kool-Aid, implemented it in our business, and have talked to, I would say, the vast majority of the people that I've already interviewed on the show implemented EOS in one form or another. Can you talk about that, and specifically like how in the dynamic works with implementing EOS in your company and incorporating that maybe into your lifestyle of your family and things of that nature?
Sure. So it's been about a year now, right?
I think so.
Since we implemented EOS, it was around Q4 of last year that we read through Traction, which is to say I read through Traction and then gave Joya some bullet points and said, hey, here's how I think this can look going forward. And she said, yes, that sounds great. I as president and CEO, bless this idea. And so we've self-implemented, I would say, most of what it talks about. It's a little bit different in a company that is functionally two people. We have a VA. We've had some 1099 relationships with RNs and briefly another nurse practitioner, although that didn't work out wonderfully well. But we have our quarterly meetings. We have our annual meetings. We run our budget off of it. We meet weekly for our level 10s. We have our to-do list flowing from that. And that's been a good, solid organizing principle for our business. And it's allowed probably me even more than Joya to feel like we're making progress toward tangible goals. The exercise of the vision traction organizer was really helpful for us in casting the vision of what is our business going to look like in 1, 3, 5, 10 years. And now that we have those North Stars, which usually that's singular, but maybe there's a path even further northward. I don't know. That was strange. But anyway, you understand.
Absolutely.
So follow me along this clunky metaphor. Now that you have this path of North Stars, we can come up with the steps to get even to the first one. And so that's taking that down to a weekly basis. And obviously the weekly rhythm of what are the most important problems in our business right now? How are we going to solve them? What action steps are we going to assign to get those done? I think really has helped clean up some things in our business. And there are still big problems left to solve, especially as we're trying to scale and hire.
Yeah.
But at least now we have what we think is a reasonably effective system for knocking those problems out in priority order. As far as how that affects our family and how it influences our kids, I'm not sure that they have great visibility into that. A lot of those meetings take place weekly. It's Monday mornings after they go to school. So if you were to ask any of our children what EOS is, I'm not sure they would know. They kind of see the bigger picture of how the business is doing. Do we have more members than we used to have? Are we making enough money to pay to go on vacation? Is far more what they're interested in than the mechanics of how we're solving problems.
Yeah.
I do think though that it's been helpful in our marriage, and I hadn't necessarily thought about that until just now. But we were talking a little bit earlier about hard conversations in business. We've got a place for those to live now.
Yeah.
Whereas before, it might have come up, maybe not on a date, but maybe on a Tuesday night at 9:30, or it just kind of simmers in my heart that I asked Joya to do something for marketing 3 weeks ago, and she hasn't thought about it since. Because these things happen in a business, especially a small business, when both people have more to do than they have hours in the day. But now we get to sit down on Monday morning, and if something's lingering, that's going to the top of the IDS portion of the meeting. And I'll tell you a story that happened yesterday. It got heated is the wrong word.
We don't get heated. I'm not sure we've ever yelled at each other.
We don't yell,
yeah.
but you know,
there's tension.
There's tension.
Right?
When you have a relationship like that, you're very sensitive to just a little extra inflection in your spouse's voice when your spouse is your business partner. You know, just a little higher pitch, a little tighter in the vocal folds. And it got to the point where we were both a little wound up over a couple of talking points. And I just said, hey, here's the thing that you need to do that's got to get done today. I'm going to go take a break. And so I went upstairs and I shaved and I brushed my teeth because I hadn't done that yet before getting the kids off to school. Mm-hmm. And that was 15 minutes of Joy being productive, me doing something that I obviously needed to do at some point in the day just to be a person. And then we came back and we finished the meeting and it was a good reset. Mm-hmm. But I'm glad that we were able to get that out, work through that. The problem no longer lingers. Here we are 28 hours later and we have a happy marriage and a happy business partnership. So thank God for that. But I've gone a little off script, but it's good to have a place for those conversations to live as opposed to letting them linger.
Yeah. I think that got to the nature of my question, which was really, you know, I constructed it poorly, but it was along the lines of like, you know, EOS, you're implementing it really as a married couple in the business. But that was my question, is like, how is that impacting your relationship as a family? Because my first episode in Fearless Family Business was with Joe Ben and Amanda Barkey, who are also EOS, or who are also in GoBundance. Mm-hmm. Amanda's an EOS implementer. They implement EOS in their businesses and their family, and they're also husband and wife partners. So, seeing how they incorporated that into their livelihoods and everything, and hearing how you are, there's just so much power to having a business system too that improves your relationships. Yeah, and so it sounds like it's doing just that. Yeah, absolutely. So now, I kind of want to get into this the health value thing here, that, you know, because you offer a service that is inherently helping people rebuild their health. And for the people listening to this show, you know, they're family business leaders, they're family business owners, or they're advisors. They're working in this inherently, you know, stressful arena where they have family dynamics. Health is an important aspect of that. And, you know, I would love to maybe just end this show on a couple notes, maybe Joya, on what are some simple things aside from, or in addition to calling Joya and engaging with Nourish House Calls, but that people can do to maybe just improve the level of stress, or maybe help them to navigate some of that and live healthier lives as leaders in the organizations that they're in.
Mm-hmm. So stress is so multifactorial, and talking about stress stresses me out a little bit because I find it's almost one of the hardest things to manage, right?
Sure.
You can tell people what to eat and when to go to bed, and hopefully they sleep through the night. You can tell people how much to exercise, but stress is it takes such a different approach. And how I almost look at it is we do need to address diet in order to address stress, because if you're eating sugar and drinking caffeine and processed foods and alcohol, et cetera, you are not going to respond as well to stress. Your body is going to be under more stress, inflamed. You're not going to be sleeping as well. And it's kind of like this cascade effect then. So diet is a piece of stress management, and it's its own thing as well, of course. Sleep is a piece of stress management. If you are not sleeping well, tell me the last time you had a poor night's sleep and had a great day where you were super regulated and you made good choices, like that, it's less likely to happen, right? So sleep is like a foundational it's foundational to address in my practice. Movement, exercise has its own value, but also contributes to stress management. Some specific stress management things that we do, we have a brain tap device, which is a device that goes on your head, and then you listen to a meditation while it kind of gives you some light stimulation, binaural beats, that kind of thing. And there's lots of different meditations themes that you can listen to, hundreds and hundreds of them, maybe thousands at this point. before we go to sleep, we listen to what we call the bing bongs to kind of get us into deeper sleep. There are these little like echo dot sized things that again give sounds that somehow make your brain feel as though you've meditated for 30 minutes, even though they're just a 3-minute kind of play of music.
Please do not Google Bing Bongs. That's a silly name we gave them. I don't know what they're called.
Yeah. I can forward you the link if you want to put them in the show notes.
Yeah, we will put those in the show notes. That's amazing.
Stress management too is partially about learning to let things go, and learning what we have control over and what we do not have control over. And even in relationship, understanding even if he said something that may have ticked me off a little bit, I know that his intent is good. So assuming good intent of your husband, wife, but of other people in general, not getting crazy and thinking everybody's out to get you, and just kind of chill out a little bit. That's pretty cliche. I understand that, but we got to learn to let things go too, and let things slide, not hold on to them.
Yeah.
I'll plug one more of our wonderful toys. There's a wristband called the Apollo Neuro, and that syncs to an app on your phone, and it will vibrate. I tend to put it on the inside of my wrist because that's a little more sensitive, but they have different programs for different times of the day. You can have 15, 30, 60 minutes for energy or for calm or for sleep. There's one setting for social, which I don't know why that makes you particularly social, but it seems to help.
Yep.
So I use that on an almost daily basis, and that helps regulate my stress too.
It's partly vagal nerve stimulation. So the vagus nerve goes from the brain and innervates literally everything, turns on and off heart, lungs, GI, bladder, everything. And so if we can tone that, stimulate that a little bit more, that often can help manage stress better too. Mm-hmm.
That's great. Well, I appreciate those simple advice. So I think the general theme is no gummy bears before bed. Get plenty of sleep. Preferably no gummy bears at all. But get plenty of sleep, exercise, and try out a lot of these supplemental things like binaural beats or the Apollo Neuro, which was just suggested by Dave. I think. Yeah, that's great advice. And where can people, if people want to find you and get in touch with you and maybe have a consult, and how can they find you and how can they get in touch?
Yeah, the best way is our website, nourishhousecalls.com, and then to book a discovery call. Right now I'm licensed in Illinois, Florida, New Hampshire, Vermont, Arizona, soon to be Washington, California, and Pennsylvania,
Texas too.
Texas I'm licensed in. So I can see patients, help patients, prescribe, diagnose, order testing for patients in all those states, whether it's in person or via telemedicine.
That's fantastic.
And if people want to see shorter videos of Joya wearing various outfits, usually sitting here, talking about health in 90-second snippets, go to our Instagram account. It's just Nourish House Calls. There's plenty of reels with some general and actionable advice there too.
Yeah, those are great. I follow Joya and it's great to get that. I also get your newsletter. I think it comes out every week or something like that. Mm-hmm. And super helpful, just simple advice and guidance and everything like that. So appreciate that. And so follow Nourish House Calls at Nourish House Calls on Instagram, nourishhousecalls.com. for a consult, to join the newsletter, anything that you'd like. Joya and Dave, I'm so grateful for your time. This has been awesome, and I can't wait to see you in Scottsdale and at our next event. And I appreciate you being here.
We'll be there. Thanks for having us on.
Thanks, Ed.
Awesome. All right. Thanks to everyone out there for listening. And if you like this show, share it with a friend if you know somebody that might benefit from this conversation. And thanks for joining us. Make sure to subscribe, do all those things, and appreciate you joining us. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Fearless Family Business Show. If you're enjoying this show, please thumbs up this episode and subscribe wherever that subscribe button is. And you'll get more family business education and insights in your inbox. And if this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend, a colleague, a spouse, your mom, your dad, a second cousin, whomever you think might benefit from hearing this show. And if you're in a family business and you've got a great story to share, contact me because I would love to see if you'd be a great fit for this show. I'd love to interview you. Or if you're struggling in your family business to find your unique identity or voice, or you need an injection of new life into your family business, I'd also love to hear from you. I'd love to learn more about you, and I'd love to see if I can help. Simply email me at adam@fearlessfamilybusiness.com, and we'll get you connected to the right place. Together, we can elevate the love, the legacy, and the lifestyle we all experience in our family businesses. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.